All right, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty fascinating. RWA tokenization, specifically a platform called IXS Swap that's trying to make it, a bit easier, a bit simpler.
Yeah, it's a space that has a ton of potential. Imagine being able to take something like real estate or even a valuable commodity and turning that into a digital token. And that's really the power of this RWA tokenization.
Yeah, sounds almost like science fiction, but
Yeah.
it is becoming more and more of a reality. But,
Yeah.
as with anything in crypto, I feel like there's always challenges that need to be overcome, right? So you give me some articles, some research on IXS Swap, and some regulatory hurdles. I saw even some notes on their tokenomics. But
hmm
I think what I'm most curious about is how IXS Swap is approaching kind of the technical and financial side of things, like the crypto science, if you will.
Yeah, and that's a really great place to focus because IXSwap is really trying to position themselves as the Uniswap for security tokens. But before we get into all that, I think it's important to first acknowledge the regulatory maze surrounding RWA tokenization.
Right, because it's not as simple as just creating a token. Right. You've got real-world laws and regulations to consider.
Exactly. And, one of the biggest challenges is determining whether these tokenized assets are actually considered securities. Um, and the source that you gave me even mentions the debate about NFTs and whether or not they fall under, securities laws. So it's kind of a gray area that IXSwap has to navigate very carefully.
Yeah, that makes sense because if a token grants you ownership
Yeah.
or a share of future profits in, it starts to look a lot like a traditional financial product, which then brings in a whole other set of rules.
Precisely. And that's where IXSwap aims to differentiate itself. They want to be that one-stop shop for security tokens, handling everything from issuance to trading, but also ensuring that,
Yeah.
they're complying with all the relevant regulations.
So let's talk about how they actually do that. So you mentioned that IXSwap wants to be the Uniswap for security tokens.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, so for starters, they offer what's called the IXS Launchpad. And this is a regulated launchpad for companies looking to launch what are called security token offerings, or STOs.
So it's like a streamlined, compliant on-ramp for getting your tokenized asset out into the market.
Exactly. But, launching the token is only the first step. The real challenge is creating a liquid market where these tokens can be traded efficiently. And that's where IXSwap takes kind of a two-pronged approach to liquidity.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So for standard digital assets, they use the familiar model of liquidity pools and an automated market maker, or AMM. And this allows for seamless trading without the need for traditional order books.
But for STOs, which represent, these more complex real-world assets, it gets a bit trickier, right? Like you can't just have an algorithm handling the trading of something like a tokenized piece of real estate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So for STOs, IXSwap partners with a third-party licensed custodian to handle the assets, and this ensures a secure and transparent record of ownership and adds an extra layer of compliance.
That's a really interesting approach. So they're combining the efficiency of DeFi with the security and the regulatory compliance of traditional finance.
Hmm.
You mentioned two approaches to liquidity. What's the second?
So the second part focuses on mitigating volatility. They have a volatility mitigation mechanism that's specifically designed to, dampen those wild price swings that we often see in the crypto world.
Right, and that's crucial, especially when you're dealing with tokenized real-world assets, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone's investing in tokenized real estate, they don't want to see the value of their investment plummet overnight because of,
Yeah.
some speculative frenzy in the crypto market.
Exactly. Stability is key when you're trying to, bridge the gap between traditional and digital finance. But this mechanism, while interesting, also raises a lot of questions.
Like what?
Well, how effective can it truly be in a market that's inherently volatile? And what are the potential downsides or limitations of trying to control price fluctuations in a decentralized system? These are questions that IXSwap will have to answer as they grow.
Yeah, those are great points. It's all about finding that right balance between innovation and stability. So we've got the platform, the regulatory considerations, the liquidity solutions. What about the team behind all of this? Who are the minds building IXSwap?
Well, the core team consists of Jillian Kwan as CEO, Aaron Ong as CSO, Alice Chen as General Counsel, Alex Kuser as CTO, and Isaf Yusufov as Managing Partner.
Okay, so that's a pretty impressive lineup. Expertise in finance, law, and technology, which makes sense given the multifaceted nature of what IXSwap is trying to achieve.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You can find a full list of team members and advisors on IXSwap's website, which, we'll link in the show notes.
Perfect. Now, I can't talk about crypto without diving into the tokenomics. So tell me about the IXS token and how it fits into all of this.
So the IXS token is designed to be the fuel that powers the IXSwap ecosystem. It has a few key functions, but one that I think is really interesting is its deflationary nature.
Deflationary tokenomics.
Okay.
Always a fun topic. So what's the crypto science behind making IXS deflationary?
So it all comes down to two special vaults, the solar vault and the moon vault. So when liquidity providers earn fees on the platform, a portion of those fees is allocated to these vaults.
Okay, so I'm picturing two giant futuristic vaults filled with digital tokens. Tell me more.
Well, the Moon Vault is used to buy back IXS tokens from the open market, and this continuous buy pressure is intended to support the token's price and potentially, drive up its value over time.
So it's a classic supply and demand play with like a space-themed twist. I like it. What about the Solar Vault? What makes that one so special?
So the Solar Vault is where things get really interesting from a deflationary perspective. So the tokens that end up in the Solar Vault are permanently locked away, essentially removed from circulation forever.
So it's like they're being sent to a black hole never to be seen again. And by decreasing the overall supply of IXS tokens, the idea is that the remaining tokens should become more valuable over time.
Exactly. That's the core principle behind deflationary tokenomics. But it's not always as simple as it sounds. The effectiveness of this model depends on a lot of factors, like the overall demand for the token and the rate at which tokens are being burned.
Right, there's always a lot of moving pieces in crypto. But it's fascinating to see how IX Swap is using these mechanisms to try to create value for token holders.
And that's just one part of their tokenomics. The IXS token also plays a role in governance, giving holders a say in the future direction of the platform.
So they're trying to create a system where the token is not only valuable, but also gives holders like a voice in the ecosystem. That's a smart move, especially if they're trying to build a decentralized, community-driven platform.
Absolutely. But as with any project in this space, it's important to look beyond the hype and really carefully evaluate the tokenomics, the team, and the long-term viability of the project.
Wise words. So we've covered a lot of ground already. From regulatory hurdles to liquidity solutions, deflationary tokenomics. It's clear IXSwap is trying to tackle some big challenges in the RWA tokenization space.
And they're not alone. There are other players emerging in this market, each with their own approach and vision.
Which makes me wonder, like, where does IXSwap fit into the bigger picture of RWA tokenization? Are they truly like a leader in this space? Or are they just one of many that are trying to carve out a niche?
That's a great question, and one that we should definitely explore further. But before we do, I think it's worth taking a closer look at some of IXSwap's key metrics and see how they stack up against the competition.
Sounds like a plan. I'm ready to dive into the numbers and get a clear picture of where IXSwap stands in the RWA tokenization landscape.
So as of September 18th, 2024, IXSwap had secured a total of $3.23 million. Through various fundraising rounds, including private investments, an IDO, and an IEO.
Okay, so a decent amount of capital raised there.
Yeah.
It shows that, investors are at least seeing potential in what they're building. But, funding is just one piece of the puzzle. What about the IXS token itself? How's that doing in the market?
Yeah, so as of that same date, the IXS token was trading at 0.25487 with a market capitalization of $100.03 million. And interestingly, the fully diluted valuation was actually a bit lower at $98.76 million.
Okay, so the fully diluted valuation is lower than the current market cap. That's unusual. What does that tell us?
It suggests that the circulating supply and total supply of IXS tokens are the same, meaning that all tokens are already in circulation, which is actually in contrast to a lot of other crypto projects where tokens are released gradually over time.
That's an interesting observation.
Sure.
Because knowing that all the tokens are already in circulation, I feel like that could actually impact, investor perception. Because it means that there's no looming threat of large token unlocks that could potentially dilute the value of existing holdings.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, but I think it's also important to, kind of zoom out for a moment and talk about the broader context here. IXSwap is operating in a market that's still in its very early stages. RWA tokenization has, like we said, a lot of potential, but it also faces some pretty significant challenges.
So what do you see as kind of the biggest obstacles to, more widespread adoption?
Well, I mean, we already touched on the regulatory complexities, but there's also, I think, the issue of education. Most people, even those familiar with crypto, don't really fully understand RWA tokenization or its potential
Right, it's
benefits.
like trying to explain the internet back in the early 90s, like
Yeah.
people just weren't ready to grasp the concept.
Exactly. There's a knowledge gap that needs to be bridged. And then there's also the issue of trust. The crypto world, as we know, has had its share of scams and scandals. So to gain mainstream acceptance, these RWA tokenization platforms, they really need to demonstrate a high level of security, transparency, and ethical conduct.
Yeah, so it's not just about building the technology. It's about building trust with users and showing them that this is a safe and reliable way to actually invest in real-world assets.
Precisely. And I think that's where IX Swap's focus on, regulatory compliance could be a real key differentiator.
Yeah.
If they can position themselves as a trusted and reliable platform, that could give them a significant advantage as this market matures.
But even with, the best technology, the highest level of trust, there's still the question of scalability, right?
Yeah.
Can a platform like IX Swap handle the massive volume of transactions? That would be required if RWA tokenization truly goes mainstream.
Yeah, that's a crucial question. And it's not just about the platform itself. It's also about the underlying blockchain infrastructure.
Right.
That needs to be able to handle the load as well.
Right, because we've seen what happens when blockchains get congested. Transaction fees go through the roof and the whole system slows to a crawl, which is, not exactly ideal for a platform that's trying to facilitate real-world asset transactions.
Yeah, and that brings us back to the crypto science aspect. IX Swap and other platforms in this space, they need to constantly be innovating and optimizing their technology to ensure that they can scale effectively and meet the demands of, a growing user base.
Yeah, it sounds like RWA tokenization is this really fascinating interplay between the technical, the financial, and the regulatory.
It is, and for IX Swap to succeed, they'll need to excel in all three of those areas. And they've, made some interesting choices, particularly with their approach to liquidity and their deflationary tokenomics.
Yeah, it's clear they're thinking carefully about the crypto science behind their platform. But as you said, it's still early days. Only time will tell whether they can really overcome the challenges and realize the full potential of RWA tokenization.
Yeah, and that's what makes the space so exciting. We're really witnessing the birth of, I think, a new financial paradigm.
Right.
And it's still unfolding before our very eyes.
It makes me wonder, what other real-world assets could benefit from tokenization? We've talked about real estate, commodities, but
Yeah.
what are some other possibilities?
Oh, absolutely. Think about things like intellectual property rights, renewable energy credits, or even fine art and collectibles.
Ooh, tokenizing fine art. That's an interesting thought. It could open up a whole new world of fractional ownership and investment opportunities.
Exactly. And it's not just about, investment. RWA tokenization could really revolutionize how we think about ownership and access to capital. Imagine a world where small businesses can easily tokenize their assets and raise funds directly from investors, bypassing traditional financial institutions altogether.
That's a pretty powerful vision. It could really democratize access to capital and empower individuals and small businesses in ways we've never seen before.
Yeah, it's a vision that IX Swap and other platforms in this space are working hard to make a reality. But like we said, it's going to take time, innovation, and a willingness to really push the boundaries of what's possible.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to see how RWA tokenization could be a real game changer.
Yeah.
Not just for, the financial industry, but for the entire global economy.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift, and IX Swap is definitely positioning itself to be a key player in this emerging landscape. They're tackling some big challenges, but they're also, innovating in some really interesting ways.
Yeah, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the need for education. What can we as members of the crypto community do to spread awareness
Yeah.
about RWA tokenization and its potential?
That's a great question. I think it starts with having conversations like this one. We need to be sharing information, breaking down these complex concepts, and explaining the benefits of RWA tokenization in a way that, everyone can understand.
Right, it's about demystifying the technology and making it accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Showing people that this isn't just, some esoteric concept. It has real-world applications that can benefit, individuals, businesses, society as a whole.
And we need to do it responsibly. Highlighting both the opportunities and the risks. We don't want to create hype or make unrealistic promises. We want to empower people to make informed decisions about whether RWA tokenization is right for them.
I agree. It's about education, not speculation. It's about building a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
This deep dive into IX Swap and the world of RWA tokenization.
Yeah.
It's really opened my eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah, it really is a rapidly evolving space. And IX Swap is just one of many platforms that are kind of
I do.
pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So, there's still a lot of questions to be answered.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so exciting.
And this is where you, the listener, come in. We've talked about real estate, commodities, we even talked about fine art.
Yeah.
But what other real-world assets do you think could benefit from tokenization?
Yeah. Head over to our social media channels and let us know your thoughts. Like what untapped potential do you see? What new opportunities might this unlock?
We'd love to hear your perspective and, continue this conversation.
So until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and as always, happy deep diving.